Welcome to Mark Supik Woodturning Workshops. In this video, I'm going to be doing an overview of turning a bowl from a blank sawn from a log that has not been dried. If you've taken the beginning bowl class, this will be a review of all the techniques from the class for turning a bowl from start to finish. We will be starting with a blank that has been sawn to a rough round shape. The first thing we do is to center the blank on the bench. So after the blank is centered, we're going to come over to the lathe. We're going to mount it between the live center and the drive center, clamp it firmly. And we're also going to place the rough side where the bark was on the tree on the right side, so that'll be eliminated when the bowl is created. Okay, after we're up to speed, we're going to bring our gouge in. We're going to hold it as vertical as possible so the cutting edge, when it approaches the wood, is vertical as well. And we're going to make a couple passes across. And all we're doing is truing up the surface of that cylinder. Okay, so now that we're happy with the surface of that cylinder, we're going to take the tool rest, turn it 90 degrees to the surface. Now we're going to create a smooth surface for the bottom of the blank. So now we are going to bring our tool rest in this position. It's going to be about a 1/4 inch below center. After we get the motor going, we're going to work from the outside of the blank and aim toward the inside. We're going to use the right side of the gouge, and we're going to work from the rim to the center. Okay, the next step, we're going to use the chuck. We're going to measure the diameter of the jaws, get an approximate size for that, and we'll transfer that to the bottom of the blank. So it's approximately 2.5 inches, maybe 2 1/4, somewhere in that area. We want to have a nice, firm, and good grip on the blank. So we put it on there with a pencil. Now we're going to use the parting tool to define the shape of that tenon. Here we go. The handle of that parting tool is going to be touching the hand wheel of the tailstock. And we're going to go into the blank at about 3/8 of an inch or so with this type of chuck. So once we have the tenon defined, we're going to change the angle of the tool rest again, this time to about a 45-degree angle to the axis of the lathe. And we're going to take our gouge and start what we call a cush cut. We're traveling to the left, so we're going to be using the left side of the gouge. And we start with the handle of that gouge rubbing up against the hand wheel, and then push that gouge in a long, wide, slow arc. Create the curve, which will be the shape of the bowl. Right, now keep in mind as you're working, we're using the left side of the gouge to make the cut. This is important as far as you're not having any catches. So I'm going to move the tool rest in because we want to have as much support as possible. Again, if you look at the gouge, it's the left side. The bevel is rubbing against the surface of the wood that you've just cut. And you're going to sweep around in a long, smooth, continuous cut, trying to leave a clean, smooth surface, also creating a smooth curve. And here we go again. We're refining the shape as we move around. The handle follows the tip almost to the rim. Again, we're going to bring the tool rest in, give ourselves plenty of support. Here we are, cleaning up the shape of the bowl. Now we're going to remove some material off the bottom to expose the tenon so the chuck has lots of clearance to grab onto the blank to have a secure fit. Here we make 2 or 3 cuts, coming in, making sure not to nick the tenon or damage it. And at the same time, we're creating the curve of the bowl, and we stop just short of that tenon. Now here we go back and curve, reverse curve, in this shape of the blank. Again, nice, smooth, hemispherical shape is what we're aiming for, leaving a nice surface behind. You have minimal finishing, minimal sanding. As we work up to the edge, very, very lightly, very slight amount of wood taking off, just dressing the surface as we go to the rim. Okay, now that we have the shape of the bowl created, now we're going to do a shear scraping cut. And this is going to finish the surface, get rid of most of the tool marks, minimize sanding, and give us a lot of control over this shape. It's just a refining of the curve that we've made. So I'm going to make a number of cuts, not too many, just again to work that surface into a nice smooth curve. So a few more cuts and we'll be done. Just keep very, very a slow speed over the travel speed over the surface. It gives you a much better quality of cut. Making it the chisel moving too quickly will leave scars and scratches. So here I'm going very easily and carefully over that surface. Just try to finesse it, just trying to make it a little bit nicer. So here we are. The outside is, for the most part, done. So what I want to do is make sure this tenon is really properly made, very much machined, very accurate. And the better I make it, the nicer I make it, the more time I spend with it, it's going to make the ability of the chuck to hold it much better. So here all I'm doing is just defining that shape, very, very light cuts. There we go. Clean up the bottom of it a tiny bit. Okay, now here we go. So the blank is coming off. It's not a bowl yet, it's still a blank. It's still a solid chunk of wood. So I'm going to take it off the lathe, and I want to mount the chuck on it. So before I do that, I'm going to move the tailstock out of the way, give myself plenty of room to work. Lay the blank on the bed, just after I take out the drive center, because I won't be using that for a while. And I'm going to put the chuck onto the blank, tighten it once, and then tighten it again on the other side, and then we're ready to put it back on the lathe. Tighten it up, bring the tool rest in, perpendicular to the axis, parallel to the face of the blank. And here we go. We're going to cut from the outside to the inside of the diameter. We're going to be traveling in the direction from left to right, so we're using the right side of the gouge. 1 or 2 cuts, and make the face of that blank smooth and clean. Give ourselves a nice surface to work from. The smoother it is, the much easier it's going to be to start cutting into the bowl itself. And here we go, another little bit more. Make sure it's nice and clean. And there we go. So we're going to try, I'll show you the different angle here. We're going to scoop the inside out. So we are again traveling from the left to the right, even though we're going inside. And we are going to use a right side of the gouge. We swing that gouge in a big arc. We get rid of that little dimple in the middle. And there we go. So you have a nice clean shape. Again, bring the handle back to the far side. Start the cut, then we open it up and swing it on around. So as I say, we start with the tool on its side with a tip, and when I mean open up, we're going to twist it slightly counterclockwise to create a good access for the cutter to remove the wood. And it's a repeat motion. Again, we're going to swing in a big arc, which gives us that very smooth curve for the inside of the bowl. So we open it up, and again, swing it on around. Leave a nice clean surface. Watch the twist a slight bit, open it up, create that cut, swing it around, leave a nice surface. Even though that surface is not going to be used, here we go again. Always try and take off the same amount of material from when you start all the way to the curve to the bottom. This is probably the most difficult aspect of turning a blank into a bowl, but it requires the most practice and is the most satisfying when you do it properly. Notice the handle drops a slight bit as I create that cut. It gives me a little bit better leverage, a little bit better angle to create this cut. Let's start it. Open it up, swing on around. See a nice, smooth, continuous cut. Try to keep up the speed and the curve in a continuous. There we go. Clean up any imperfections. Always go back, make sure the surface is good. It's always a little bit better to travel slowly over the surface than to travel too quickly. Seems to be pretty good. Now we're going to make about 2 or 3 more cuts to get the bowl to the final thickness. Again, we start it on its side, open it up a little bit, drop the handle down, and here we go. Long, smooth curve. Look at the adjustment there. Final thickness of this bowl will be under a ½ inch, so we still have a few more passes to make. And try to ride the bevel on the surface of the material that you've just cut. That will ensure a smooth, clean cut. We're also going to aim to keep the wall thickness consistent from the rim to the bottom. And I'll pick up where I left off. All the way to the bottom. Irregularities, go back and smooth them out. Okay, one final time. This is going to be the pass that leaves the finish, so I'm going to really be careful. And we're going to be focusing on leaving a clean surface, a smooth surface that doesn't need much finishing. After I have this done, I'm going to turn on the gouge over to its other side and do a very, very light shear scraping cut. A little more cleaning up. I'm also, again, keeping in mind the wall thickness, trying to be as consistent as possible to follow the outside of the bowl. Look for some imperfections, make sure that's all clean. Now we're going to do a very light shear scraping cut. Just pull a few tool marks from that surface. Okay. See, that one little spot needs to be dressed. This is the aspect of bowl turning that's very satisfying when done correctly and very heartbreaking when you do it incorrectly. So I'm not doing any sanding in this video. Just want to show the tool technique. Sanding is not a difficult thing to learn, and we don't want to create a lot of dust. Okay, so now we're going to take it off. The bowl is almost done, but not quite. After we take the chuck off, we're going to mount on a jam chuck. This is a piece of scrap material that's turned into a negative or positive shape of the inside of the bowl. Test fit it. And bring up the tailstock. Just very light pressure, just enough to stabilize it, to hold it so it spins. You don't want to put too much pressure. Too much pressure can actually crack the bowl. So here we go. Now we're going to remove the waste material, the tenon, from that bottom. And so we have to get in as close as we possibly can. Get the tool rest in very close. Create some support, as much support as possible. And again, we're just going to remove this material. And again, we're going to try to leave as smooth a surface as possible for the bottom of that bowl, for the foot, because we don't do much sanding there. And what we're going to be left with is a pin about a ½ inch in diameter that we're going to use a parting tool and a detail gouge to remove. So right now we're just going to dress the very bottom of the bowl with the bowl gouge. Again, it's a very light scraping cut, just to dress that a little bit and do minimal sanding. Just another cut or two. Now I'm going to define the foot on the outside by refining the bowl shape. Again, just very light cuts, very, very small amounts of material being taken off with each pass. The bowl's getting pretty thin. Don't want to take too much off at one time. So when I'm done with this cutting, this is the time you would do the sanding. You would do whatever kind of smoothing that you need to do while it's still on the lathe. You still need the pin there, the centering pin, to support it when you are doing the sanding. So here it's about as small as I can make that pin with this gouge, with this particular bowl gouge. So what I am going to do now is grab the parting tool and start breaking that pin down and worrying at it. And always moving the tool rest, keeping it close, providing support, makes things so much easier when you do that. And again, I'm doing a shear scrape and cut just to remove some of those tool marks from the cutting. Okay, now we're going to bring the parting tool in. You need that fine tip to get into that close area. We're going to work left to right, right to left. Just very, very light cuts. It's getting very fragile now, so we can't put too much pressure on it, or else it might snap and come off the lathe. Parting tool does a good job at this, but it doesn't take a lot of material off at one time. Take it down to about 3/8 of an inch or so, maybe even a little bit less. Once we have that, I'm going to bring in the detail gouge, which is even a finer point. I'm going to remove that pin. Just clean a little bit of the bottom of the bowl. Make the pin a little smaller. And shear it off. That's about as thin as we want to make it. It should snap off very easily. And a tiny bit of sandpaper on the bottom will clean that up and dress it and make a finished bowl. And that's it for our bowl lesson today. Hope you enjoyed it. Certainly any questions or any comments, write to me, email, and I'll be happy to help you with any way I can.